Well, guys, it's Aggie Week. Thanksgiving night, the Texas Longhorns will travel to College Station to take on in-state rival Texas A&M Aggies. Hopefully, if they just can beat them, move on to the Big 12 Championship against Nebraska, and then possibly a national championship. But this week it's a big rivalry game, and the Aggies really hadn't had the best year so far compared to the Texas Longhorns, who, as I said earlier, poised to go to national championship. But that hadn't stopped some Aggies from being very confident in their team that they might win this game. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be confident or that it's impossible that the Aggies could beat Texas. But some of the arguments I've heard from a lot of A&M fans really don't seem as compelling as they probably should be. So I've compiled the top 5 reasons A&M will beat Texas that I've heard from actual Aggies. Starting with number 5, the Aggies killed Tech, while Texas only beat them by 10 at home. Now, some of you who don't know this, because the game wasn't on TV, the Texas A&M Aggies rolled into Lubbock, huge underdogs against Tech, a place they hadn't won in 7-8 years, and completely demolished Texas Tech. Now, I didn't watch it on TV, but I did see a replay on a Big 12 replay on FSN, and they ran the football over Tech. Tech didn't have an answer for Christian Michael and Cyrus Gray, and they ended up beating them by over 30 points. Contrary to Texas, when Tech came to town, Texas had a struggle. It was a game, and Texas ended up pulling it out with 10 points. After that game, a lot of Aggies were talking about how, look at this, man. We've shown that we're on the same level as Texas because we beat a team they beat that they played at home, but we took them on the road and beat them by even worse. So, of course, that means we're going to beat Texas this year. It doesn't usually work like that. And the problem with Texas A&M, they are the most schizophrenic team this season. There's some games their offense is clicking, and then half the games they're not. A great stat to know about the Texas A&M right now, they have lost all of their games by an average of 27 points. That being said, they've won all their games by an average of 27 points. That kind of schizophrenic mentality is not going to work against one of the best teams in the country. So I don't think using one team that you've beaten worse on the road than Texas did really validates any claim that you're going to take on the Longhorns. Number 4, it's the 10-year reunion of the Bonfire. And some of you who don't know this, if you're not outside of Texas, but even if you are, 10 years ago, Texas A&M, every Longhorn week, they have a bonfire. Well, one week, and it's a student-led organization. And something happened 10 years ago. The bonfire collapsed, and it killed, I can't remember the number. I want to say eight people. It was bad. It was real bad. And, and you never want to make light of something like that. And really it hits home with me because one of the girls who was killed in that bonfire was from my hometown. So, and that's a huge deal. And if you watch that game that year, those Aggies on that field, there was something with them that day. And that was the Aggies' day. Longhorns played hard, but you weren't beating the Aggies that day. And so in that sense, I give them credit, and they definitely came out and really represented well and played with a lot of emotion. But that being said, just because of the 10-year the 10-year reunion of that doesn't really mean that emotion's going to overflow. The guys on this team don't have the same mentality as those guys 10 years ago. And though there may be some memorial played or something like that, I don't think that's going to translate on the field. I think people will remember that, but I don't think the players will actually react as it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, that's a valid claim. This week, it's not really working. Number 3, tradition. Singing songs and swaying in the crowd will knock off the Texas Longhorns. And so some of you outside of this, you may think that's really stupid, but actually for Aggies, that's a thing that's usually brought up all the time. They usually claim to have way more tradition than any other school, and they do. They have a lot of tradition, and I respect the kind of school spirit they've got. But when you talk to an Aggie about football, and that's what it's supposed to be talking about, I'm talking about football, this always comes up. They talk about how we're going to saw the horns off, and we're gonna get in the heads of the players. I've been to College Station. I went to the game in 2005, and that crowd was nuts. It was crazy. But that team in 2005 that they had was a little better than this year's team, and they weren't that good that year either. But just the crowd noise, if that's all you got, I've said this before in a video, crowd noise works great when you've got a team that can win. But if you can't tell me anything about your team that has any chance of knocking off the number 3 team in the country, I don't think it really works too well. Which leads into number 2, the spirit of Aggieland. that's something, and I think I'm with everybody else in Texas that's not an Aggie when you have to listen to this from them. Whenever this usually only comes up when their team's not very good. So past couple years they've used this quite a bit. That there's something different about A&M. There's something special about it. And that's why one of the reasons when you talk to an Aggie and you make fun of their school, you make fun of their team or whatever, they really get real defensive about it. Now, they'll make fun of your school. They'll make fun of you. They'll talk bad about the Longhorns and talk bad about Austin all day long. You start talking bad about College Station, you start talking bad about Texas A&M, you've crossed a line. And apparently there's something in the air that helps the Aggies win more so than... Now, I'll grant it, they're better at home, like most teams are, and they're not very good on the road. But Texas this year plays this season, if you look at the stats, has played better on the road. We went into Stillwater, Oklahoma, and completely destroyed the second best team in the conference, 41-14. So just because it's a road game for Texas, that may be worse. Because sometimes Texas, when they're at home, plays a little more complacent than when they're on the road. This team this year really responds to road-type atmospheres. And you can see it definitely from watching the games. But number one, and you all know this, that I hear all the time, the Aggies have beaten the Longhorns the last 2 out of 3 years. You talk to an Aggie anytime right now, that will be brought up anytime. Now, they forget about last year, and actually, the fact is, they beat us, those 2 years they beat us in Austin 12-7, or 12-7, 12-6, I can't remember now. I blank that, I don't remember. They ask them, they'll remember. And they beat us, I think, 38-30. So, but when we beat them 49-9, a 40-point difference. Now, of course, it doesn't matter how much you win by. And, it's you win a game by 40, you lose a game by 40, you still lost. That being said, I think it shows why Texas is usually the better program. And when the Aggies beat the Texas Longhorns, it's considered an upset. And they're so focused on that 2-3 number, that 2 out of 3 years. Well, if you want to look at it, Texas has won the last 8 out of 11 years. But the thing is with the Aggies, they forget about last year, what happened last year when they came to Austin and we completely destroyed them. The thing is, I remember that game wasn't even about the Aggies. That game was more about proving to BCS voters that we belonged in the championship game. And so I've told this before. When the Aggies came here, the Aggies that were in Austin were confused and stuff because we didn't even care about them. We were talking about how we should jump Oklahoma and be on a national scale. The Aggies were just there as meat for fodder. So, and what's so sad about it, the Aggies, they still wear T-shirts around that say "sawed off back to back." I watched the Arkansas game when they played down in Arlington, and you can see people with T-shirts on with still to an Arkansas game, mind you. They're not playing Texas. That say "sawed off back to back," completely forgetting that 49-9 drubbing they got here in Austin. So Aggie fans, please let me know, what has your team done this year that shows you they have a chance to beat Texas? Because I know that our team we're favored by over 3 touchdowns this week, and I don't see that not happening. Texas has been really good on the road this year, and the Aggies are so bipolar. Their defense is horrible, and on offense, Gerard Johnson, I'll give him some props. Cyrus Gray and Christian Michaels, those guys are good. But your offensive line is terrible. Your receivers can't catch. You're going to have a problem against this Texas and Muschamp defense. You can talk about how you've beaten Colt 2 times. That's great. Hang your hat on that, and we'll move on. But we're going to go run through you guys on our chance to get to the Big 12 championship. We've already sealed that up. Beat Nebraska, and then move on to the national championship. It's just a roadblock in the road. A big roadblock because you guys are rivals, and I love beating you guys. So, Aggie video makers, let me know where am I wrong on here, and tell me why exactly Texas A&M will beat Texas. Not just could beat Texas, but they will beat Texas. We'll see you guys later. Hook 'em horns and Texas fight. See you on Thanksgiving.